Today my goal is to help out game masters and traveling DMs who want to run games outside of their own home by making some really durable portable tiles you can throw in your bag, and I'm also going to do them on basically a non-existent budget. You are going to need one super special ingredient, so really disposable plates. Hey guys, welcome back to Black Magic Craft. This week's episode is sponsored by Loki Battle Mats, and they make a bunch of tools and resources for traveling GMs. Most interestingly, these battle books, which are essentially big battle mat pages in a nice hardcover book that you can throw in a bag and take on the road with you. As I was looking through these, I thought, these look really nice. They have really beautiful artwork, really nice detailed tile patterns, and that's something that's really kind of hard to achieve with homemade terrain that you can take on the road. A lot of people often ask me, how do you travel with your terrain? And the answer is I don't. I run my games at home, and I run them at home for a reason, because throwing a bunch of stuff in a bag, taking it somewhere else or in a box is really stressful and not my idea of fun. But I thought it should be possible to make durable dungeon tiles that you could throw in a bag. The idea here is just to make 4, maybe 6 of these, and then you can put them out and they act as a really nice looking battle board. But I also wanted to make them double-sided, and most importantly, I wanted to make them really cheap so that literally anybody could do it. Anybody. No fancy tools, unless you think a ruler and an X-Acto knife is a fancy tool. No insulation foam, just disposable styrofoam plates and a little bit of foam core, which you could just use cardboard for. Like, this is as cheap as it gets, folks. The first thing you want to do is cut yourself some squares out of your substrate of choice. Now, I'm using dollar store foam core for this, but you could totally get away with using cardboard if you had to. Important to note is that this isn't the easy peel foam from Dollar Tree. This is Studio brand, and I buy it from Dollarama. The paper is stuck on really securely. It's not ever going to peel off. Now, the good news is that almost every brand of foam core that you find is actually going to be like this. The easy peel stuff from Dollar Tree is the outlier. So if you go to Walmart and buy some foam core, the Elmer's brand or whatever, it's probably going to be just like this one. Now, you do need to cut out some squares, and I recommend using 6" by 6" squares, as just a handful of these will be enough to set up multiple encounters. You don't need to make a ton, make 4 or maybe 6. If you struggle to lay out a perfect square, I do have a video that goes into the principles of laying out and cutting perfect squares in detail that you can check out. Now, to make the actual stone pieces, you could cut some XPS foam really thin and then carve it up and whatever, but if you don't want to do that, or if you don't have access to a machine to do that, there's a great resource, disposable plates. They are literally just made out of thin XPS foam. The one downside is that some of them don't take texture that great, but this will really depend on the plates that you happen to find. Luckily, most of the look is gonna come from the individual stone pieces and the paint job, and it's not really that dependent on texturing. If your group likes playing with a grid and you want to make a subtle grid pattern on your tiles, well, it helps to lay out that grid on your substrate first to act as a bit of a guide while you're building. This way you can cut individual stones, but make the main grout lines imply that 1" grid. It's totally up to you. Once you have your thin foam, you can really do any type of stone or brick pattern you'd like, anything you can imagine. And this is a pretty tedious process, and I messed around a lot when doing it, especially on the first one, to try to find the most efficient approach. I also tried different glues. One good option is a glue stick, and if you can find the extreme variety that's more sticky, that's even better. This type of glue is going to prevent warping, and it's nice and clean to work with. The one thing you really want to avoid is regular PVA glue like Elmer's Glue All. It just shrinks too much and it will almost for sure warp the heck out of your tiles. You don't want that. For a little while, I experimented with Mod Podge as the glue, and first I tried the gloss type, simply because my matte stuff is already mixed with paint. Mod Podge shrinks far less when it dries than PVA, so it's not nearly as prone to causing warping. but I found that it was drying way too fast to work with, making it no more practical than just using a glue stick. I then switched to my matte Mod Podge that had the black paint mixed in and found this worked way better, and it gave me way more working time. I'm not sure if it's just a matte versus gloss thing or the result is because it's been diluted with that black paint, but either way, it stayed tacky just long enough to make it convenient to work with. And about midway, I found that I could get away with applying bigger strips and just cutting out the stones in place by cutting away the grout lines. This turned out to be way easier and quicker than when I was individually cutting and placing the stones. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of personal preference involved here, and you should just do what I did, which is experiment with different methods on your first tile until you find the one that is the right balance of looking good and not being too annoying to do. I'm not going to sugarcoat it though. This is by no means a fast process. It's very tedious, but that's often the trade-off when you're trying to save money. I will say that having something like a hot wire actually wouldn't help you much here. Realistically, if you had one, yeah, you could cut your foam thinner instead of using the plates, but you'd still be at the same tedious bottleneck. However, if you have the time to spare and you enjoy the process, this is a really great way to get some nice looking 3D tiles for almost zero cost. Thankfully, the wood side is a lot easier and faster. It's just a matter of using a wire brush to put in some wood grain. And if you don't have one on hand, well, maybe you actually do. Go check your barbecue because a barbecue brush works just fine as long as it's not covered in gross burned stuff and sauce. And if you don't have anything, you can get a bag of like 3 of these from stores like Home Depot or Walmart for just a few dollars, and they're gonna last you basically forever for hobby purposes. The most efficient way to do this is to just texture the whole plate and then cut a bunch of planks of similar width and start laying them out like an actual hardwood floor. Once you're done each side, it is helpful to put on a coat of Mod Podge to make these more durable long term. Now, even though the Mod Podge doesn't cause a lot of warping, you still might get some. It's kind of unavoidable when working with foam core or cardboard. And if you did use PVA, well, you're probably gonna have some severe warping. There's a nice little solution to fix this, and it's also gonna have an added bonus of protecting the edge of your tiles. Just grab some coffee stir sticks. You don't even have to buy those, just go steal them from the coffee shop if you want, or buy a giant bag of them for like $2. The trick is to flatten out the tile onto your work surface. Push it down flat and hot glue the coffee stir stick right to the edge. This should stop most of the bow. Before I paint the tiles, I want to spend a minute taking a closer look at the product from this week's sponsor. While these sorts of tiles are great, realistically, a big book like this with tons of different environments ready to use that you can just plop on your table is going to be the best option. So this set comes with 2 volumes, and each page of each book has wonderful and exciting artwork in a variety of settings that should give you basically everything you need to run just about any type of encounter. The pages are also dry erase marker friendly, giving you way more flexibility during your game and during your battle to customize the battleground with whatever you need. You can even use both books in tandem to combine environments and create larger play areas. The ring coil binding makes it really easy to fold them over and use either 1-page or 2-page layouts. Throw some scatter terrain on them and, well, you're ready to roll initiative. Hell, you can even mix these books with other tiles if you'd like. There's really no reason you can't mix and match to get an even more dynamic setup. The really nice art on the books complements 3D terrain really well. The really big advantage with these things is the convenience. You can just throw 1 or 2 of these books in your backpack, not worry about them getting damaged or spilling all over the place, and get to your game. Whatever encounter you have, you can find the appropriate battle mat, drop it on the table, throw on a little bit of scatter terrain that you've brought along with you and some miniatures, and you're ready to go. Now, the dungeon set is just one of a few different themes that they have available on their website. I'll put a link in the video description below, lokibattlemats.com, but you can also probably get these at your favorite local game store or favorite online retailer. Thank you, Loki, for sponsoring this video and for inspiring me to make these tiles. Now let's paint them. Before I paint, I like to give everything a solid coat of flat black craft paint, and the brand really doesn't matter here. None of the brands I use or even the specific colors will matter at all. So please don't ask for the exact colors. Just any basic acrylic craft paint in similar colors will be fine. I started by painting out all the stone and grout lines with a darker gray. This took 2 solid coats. The most important part is making sure I got into all the nooks and crannies, as this color would provide the actual color for the grout on the finished pieces. And then comes the fun part, painting out the stones. You can just make everything gray, and that's totally fine, but if you want to make it more interesting and to really make these look a lot better than they deserve to look, you can do that by painting out the stones in several different colors. I started with a light gray, a khaki, and a reddish brown, but as I progressed, I introduced some other colors. Don't be afraid to blend colors and to have more than one color blended on the same stone. The more blending and variety, the better. You can add even more variants by sponge painting on some light speckles of various colors. Once that's all done, you can blend everything together with a very gentle dry brushing of light gray or tan, or even a creamy white. Now this looks pretty decent on its own, and you could stop here. But if you want to add a bit more grime and tone down some of those colors, you can do so by adding a black wash. Now I have a few videos about making washes. One is just water and paint and some dish soap. The other involves more expensive ingredients to make a more professional wash that performs a lot better. And here I'm going to show you a kind of in between. Something that flows and adheres way more like a professional wash, but is still super duper budget. The secret is just Pledge floor polish. You may already have this on hand, and if not, you can find it at most big box stores or a dollar store if you're lucky. You use this in place of the water and dish soap, and actually in place of the matte medium in the more complicated version. This mix is very basic. Just add some black paint and mix it with the Pledge. Don't add any water. It's just all Pledge. It may take you a few tries to get the consistency right. If you find it too light, add more paint, and if it's too dark, dilute it with more Pledge. There's a ton of room for error here, and it's pretty darn forgiving. If I have to give you a ratio to start with, if you really need one, well, I'd say maybe about 1 part paint to 20 parts Pledge, give or take. The great thing about this stuff is that it flows really well, and it works like a paint medium for actual good adhesion as it dries. The downside, however, is that it dries pretty darn shiny. This is fine if you want a wet look, but if you want it to look less shiny, you're gonna need to hit it with a matte varnish or maybe some matte Mod Podge. But if you wanna keep restricting the cost, you can do another light dry brushing of off-white to kind of tone it down a bit. Now for the wood side. First, grab some golden brown or like a kind of nutmeg type brown. I decided to use both. Using a damp brush, apply a thin coat of paint in the same direction of the planks. That part's really important. Go with the grain. If you decide to use 2 colors, just randomly blend them to create some more slight variance. Once that coat is fully dry, you can use a really light tan to dry brush and highlight the edges of the grain. Now, with the styrofoam plates, the grain is not as well defined and pronounced as you might like, so be careful here, go gentle, and just hit the highest point and avoid making kind of paint-like streaks. Just go slow and steady. Be careful. Again, I applied the same type of homemade wash, but this time I made another batch that included some very rich reddish brown along with some black. I found that I liked what was happening if I applied a combination of the brown wash and the black wash from earlier, but this is totally optional. You could absolutely get away with just using one or the other. Just using that one batch of black wash from earlier for both sides would be totally cool. The finishing touch was just to paint out the edges. I chose black because that's how I roll, but you could opt for a brown or a gray to match one of the sides of the tiles. And as you can see, with very little in terms of material and tools, you can create pretty decent looking tiles that are gonna hold up well and not take a huge amount of space in a bag or a travel box. You don't even need to make a lot of these. You can make 4, maybe 6 at most, and with them being double-sided, that should be more than enough to set up most battle areas for encounters. Now, as good as these are, like I said, they're a fair bit of work. They're pretty tedious. What you save in money, you certainly spend in time. And if you don't want to go through all that hassle, again, check out these Loki Battle Mat books. They are absolutely fantastic, and really, they're better than hauling dungeon tiles to wherever you're going to be playing, and they're a lot more convenient than rolling up a battle mat. And overall, I just think they're really nice and really nifty. So thank you again, Loki, for sponsoring this video. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, let me know in the comments section and hit that like button. If you do want to pick up some tools or supplies for your hobby needs, you can head over to blackmagiccraft.ca. There is my curated list of all the stuff that I use most. I explain it and I link to it so you can buy the right thing. I don't have styrofoam plates on that list though. Just go to the store and buy some styrofoam plates. If you enjoy these videos that I make each and every week and you want to help me keep making them, there's one really fantastic way you can do that, and that's by supporting the channel on Patreon. The support there is crucial to keeping this machine operational and allowing me the freedom and the resources and the time to make these videos for you guys. I really couldn't do it without the support of the folks on Patreon. So big, huge thank you to everybody who's supported me there over the years of this channel's existence. And if you want to join up, help out, join the Blackmagic Craft Fellowship, get in on the Discord server, the Facebook group, watch these videos early, you can do that on Patreon. That's it for this week, guys. Cheers. See you again next week.